My name is Marcia Jews. Welcome to STEM City USA's coverage of the Women of Color STEM Conference. Through all 3 days, we will be bringing you incredible interviews with inspiring STEM pioneers leading the way in industry, government, academia, and around the world. And now, please welcome our next guest.
Hi, my name is Amanda Hundt, and I am the Vice President of Corporate Communications at Health Catalyst. Something interesting about me is that I absolutely love to bake and experiment with new recipes.
Welcome to Women of Color. We are so excited for all that's going on at the Women of Color STEM Conference. 28 years we've been doing this. And today with us we have Amanda Hunt, who serves as Vice President of Corporate Communications at Health Catalyst, where she is responsible for the company's internal and external communications, content marketing, and business development proposal program. Prior to joining Health Catalyst, Hunt counseled some of the world's foremost healthcare, biotechnology, and health technology companies at We Communications. Health Catalyst was among those clients, ensuring a smooth transition into her new role. Hunt's global PR and marketing firm experience also includes Spark PR, Grace Point Global, and Garage Group. She graduated from the University of New Mexico with a Bachelor's of Arts degree and is currently an MBA candidate at the University of Arizona. Hello.
Hi. Thanks for having me. I'm good. How are you?
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's an honor.
Yes, and it is. 28 years we've been doing this.
Excellent.
So how did you decide to go into this area?
Sure. So I've always been interested in healthcare. As a young teen, I volunteered for the Red Cross at a hospital, and I was always interested in it. It was always important to me, and I thought it was something that I wanted to go into professionally. I considered medical school for a while, and then thought PR was more up my alley, and that's what I've been pursuing.
And so in looking at the healthcare of today, to have you where you are now, what is going on with how we interface with communities with the healthcare? I've had friends at Blue Cross and some of the others, and so you just wonder how that information gets down to the people who are either the people who are members or from a community development standpoint. And how do you use your ability to write to make certain that your organization and the communities at large, because this is a large organization and it's not just one place, right?
Sure.
How do you deploy that information?
Sure. Well, the healthcare industry is dynamic and it's incredibly complex. It's not the same in every state and it's not the same in every country. And I think what is foremost at Health Catalyst, and I think at many organizations, is keeping the patient centered. So at Health Catalyst, our mission is to improve healthcare for every patient on the planet. And we do that through the use of data and analytics technology. We're helping hospitals and health systems to make smarter decisions by analyzing the data that they have on their patients and helping to inform their practice clinically, operationally, and financially. And I think that if leaders, both in business and technology, as well as in hospitals and health systems, keep the patients at top of mind, we'll get closer to those goals that we're working toward.
That's a huge statement. Keep those patients at the top of the mind of the leadership running these organizations. And too often, I don't think we do a lot of that in many cases because we're so busy trying to get to the next piece.
Sure,
right?
Sure.
And the next piece that you have to do the research. So it's all, how does it come together? Even though they're silos, they have to connect and intersect.
I think it's a constant reminder to everybody, because you're right, there's competing priorities in every organization. And coming out of the COVID pandemic, we know that revenue is a huge issue for hospitals and health systems. So not only do they have to keep their patients healthy, they have to keep the lights on. And those are very competing priorities. And I think from a communications perspective, what we like to think about is how can we ensure that we are reaching those patients that are at the most critical need, while also helping to keep healthy patients healthy. And so that's why we do encourage the use of data and analytics to really assess their patient population. Who needs help the most? How can we keep them healthy? And healthy patients that don't need the hospital, what can we do preventatively to care for them?
And as an agency of healthcare, we're looking at the hospitals and the doctors as different silos, right? And the intersection is the healthcare provider.
Sure.
And that channels, it keeps rising to the top. How do we find that balance between the Medicare and Medicaid and this healthcare? I mean, there's all these different organizations that provide healthcare to our citizens, but how are those that are the least of us able to survive through some of those financial challenges? Because it's costly to go into a hospital with whatever insurance you have, right?
Sure.
Balance that.
That is an incredibly difficult question, if I'm being honest. Coming from a communications background, working for a technology company, I think what we need to encourage hospitals and health systems to do is to be data informed. So it is looking at everything. It's looking at the financial impact on patients as well as on hospitals. It doesn't pay for a hospital to keep patients sick. So how can we keep them healthy? I think that's incredibly important. It goes back.
Powerful statement. Say that one more time.
So it doesn't pay for a hospital or a health system to keep patients sick. They want to keep patients healthy. Healthcare is incredibly expensive, and the patients who cost the most need the most care. So I think that we need to think about moving people from a place of healthcare to a place of health. And organizations are working on that. I think they're trying. There's a lot of initiatives in place. But then again, it goes back to those competing priorities that we talked about. And in my role at Health Catalyst, and Health Catalyst's role is to help organizations look at all of those competing priorities, focus their attention on the areas of greatest impact to ensure that we are improving healthcare for every patient, especially those who need it the most.
And so when you also look at this, and some of the least of us have the most problems. Mm-hmm. And many of those items are coming out of communities that do not have the proper food. We have food deserts all over this nation. And so that's part of being healthy.
Yep.
Eating healthy foods and having access to healthy foods.
Absolutely.
And so what I would really ask the healthcare companies to start in hospitals, to start looking at how do we keep our citizens because in every city it's happening. It's not just one little town over in Pueblo, Mississippi. It's all over this country.
That's
and
right.
Until we deal with the diets, because it's the natural foods that keep you healthy.
I think food is a great example. I think you also have to think about transportation and shelter. And one example that we have is one of our clients, Queens. They're in Hawaii. And they were having issues with a certain population in their community that is unhoused. And so how can you expect people who don't have shelter to also have transportation, reliable transportation to their appointments? And so we looked at that, and we've implemented a program with their leadership who is very forward-thinking in issues of health equity and thinking about what steps can we take to ensure that this population that is very expensive in terms of healthcare dollars, and thinking about how can we ensure they have reliable transportation. What kind of case management should we put in place to make sure that they're taking their preventative medications that will keep them from having to go to the hospital? How can we inform their nutrition that is not only good for them, but accessible for them? And so as more organizations think more holistically about the care of a patient, food, as you mentioned, shelter, mental health, all kinds of therapies to make sure that, like we talked about earlier, keeping people healthy and not keeping people sick.
You know, I live in Baltimore, and we have several communities that are food deserts. and a lot of vacant properties. And there was something that I saw probably a year, 2 years ago, where people were taking vacant homes and the cities were taking up. Remember that? Yes, I'm walking down the street. But they were building, refurbishing all of these vacant properties and giving them to people to rent at a nominal fee. So if you don't have a place to live and you're living in the street or in a vacant building, how can you expect to have all of the other amenities that life normally would give you? And so I think sometimes we have to look at the reality of our world, just like you're talking about in Hawaii, and it's all across this nation.
Absolutely.
So when you look at those numbers, how do we change the trajectory of these people's lives?
I think it's utilizing the data and analytics, going back to that, looking at certain populations of people, what services do they need, and can we as a healthcare organization either put those opportunities in place for our patient population or work with our communities to find these novel solutions, as you mentioned, to ensure that they do have the housing and the nutrition and the care that they need to help improve their illnesses. And I think, going back, I'm going to keep going back to data analytics because it's what we practice, what we know. But they don't know. If you don't look at your patient populations and figure out, okay, why aren't they making appointments? Why is this certain subset of people continuing to struggle with their nutrition? Is it access? Is it a food issue? What is coming from this? And so until we analyze that information and ask the right questions, we won't get those right answers.
Some of those questions need to come from the community themselves. And I sit down and I live in Baltimore, but I've lived in every major urban market in this country. And in every single one of them, we're losing, there's boarded up businesses that are grocery stores. That's where your food is, but you can't get in there because it's all boarded up. However, on every other corner, you got a liquor store. And we don't have on every other corner of the liquor store, we got a drug dealer. So how do we find that balance with the organizations of cities and the mayors and the congressional organizations to deal with the truth about this nation? Because it's not just your company, it's not Blue Cross, it's not just, whoever. This is I think it's a disaster. I think that it is unacceptable that in this country we have all this money, all of this availability, and the people who need it the most have no access to it. How do we deal with that? And that's a lot. But see,
yeah.
I can't help it. I'm that girl.
No, it's good. When I run for president, I'll make this a part of my platform. But seriously, it's a much larger societal problem that we're talking about. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I live in San Francisco, so I'm keenly aware of the dynamic that's at place. In some parts of the city, you can easily get to grocery stores, fresh foods, farmers markets. In other places, that's simply not the case. And I think it comes up to representation. I think ensuring that disenfranchised populations have access to being able to vote for politicians who will represent them and who have plans in place to improve those communities. At the very basic level, we have to have greater representation of our populations so that we can take those proactive steps to improving our communities. And then I think there's other issues at play when it comes to education, when it comes to legal issues, when it comes to criminal reform. It's everything, and it's much larger than just health. Absolutely, healthcare can certainly improve, and there are very, very committed people in the healthcare industry who want to see these changes and have fantastic ideas. But as you mentioned, there's other issues at play that have to be overcome as well.
That's right. And it's the games people play.
Sure.
You've got to get through that whole political process, depending on who you are and how you ran your campaign and all of that other foolishness. But, I think that organizations such as yours that are doing the work to see what's going on and to be able to have these conversations comfortably with the truth. And we need to be able to take these to the leaders of our communities. And so what's interesting here is with an organization like the Women of Color, STEM conferences, science, technology, engineering, and math, and all of that science goes into the health, and all of that, it speaks to that. And so maybe it's also something that's here because there are people such as yourself who are doing the hard work, who are doing the labor to change communities' lives. So I'm glad that you're here, and I hope that you come back because now
Thank you.
It's expected that you don't have to be here every year from now on. You're now part of the family.
I would be happy to. It's been an excellent conference, and I'm honored to be here.
And I'm honored to have you here and grateful that you spent this time. And hopefully you find a community for yourself in these halls. And they are 28 years later.
That's incredible.
We were all at the Black Engineer. Have you been to the Black Engineer of the Year Awards conference?
I attended remotely.
Okay.
Yep. Yes.
But you're going to have to come to Black Engineer, and we expect you to come back next year. And what I'd like for us to have is a conversation, maybe we could host a panel or do a retreat kind of thing, happen to talk about what we just talked about.
Okay.
I think that could be very powerful.
All right.
On many levels. Can you look at me?
You're signing me up already.
I don't even know you.
No, I think it's an important conversation to be had, and I know that there are likely other women and men in this population who would likely have great things to contribute as well.
Yes, I'm certain of it, and it's out of these different types of conferences where we're having real conversations. They're all part of the mix.
Sure.
That we walk away because if we've got, I don't know how many thousands of people are here.
Yep.
And everybody goes back with a mission, on a mission to do whatever that is.
Right.
And to come back and report back next year.
No, that sounds great. These problems, they cannot be solved alone, and especially not by one company or one industry. So
They can.
that's a great idea.
It takes a village.
Absolutely.
It really does. Thank you so much, Amanda Hundt. And we'll be back.